2022 Land Rover Defender 110 SE D300 v 2022 Nissan Navara Pro 4X Warrior comparison. They're not exactly two peas in a pod, but this is an interesting comparison to flesh out. They're both four-wheel drives that can never be accused of bargain status, which bring a pedigree of off-road capability and on-road competence. And as is the nature of their breed, both the 2022 Land Rover Defender and Nissan Navara Warrior tend to include a heavy dose of practicality and utility within their off-road chops. Both go about their business in a different manner. One is a brutish factory-modified UTA with fettled rubber and suspension in a quest for a better overall end product. The other has a nameplate steeped in traditional off-road history, but approaches it from a decidedly 21st century point of view. But the hypothetical question still stands: if the keys of each car were sitting on the desk, which one should you take? Land Rover Defender. Even though it's the first all-new Defender in about 70 years, Land Rover hasn't wasted any time giving the model year 2022 Land Rover Defender a bit of a spruce up with new specifications, powertrains and options. And to get the lie of the Land Rover, we've been behind the wheel of what could potentially be the pick of the range. Not base model, nor excruciatingly overloaded, is the 2022 Land Rover Defender 110 SE D300. While the two-door Defender 90 comes in with a lower starting price, our five-door Defender 110 model represents two jumps up from the base petrol-powered 110p 300 specification, which is priced from $81,890 plus on-road costs. Priced from $101,950 before options and on-road costs, SE grade is the first specification to get access to the more powerful diesel engine. It's called D300 and is an inline-six twin-turbo diesel that makes 220 kilowatts and 650 newton-meters. All of your other engine options for the Defender 110 are petrol, including the soon-to-arrive P525 supercharged V8. On first impressions, the Defender 110 SE seems to have a lot of the right boxes ticked: electric leather seats, center console, matrix LED headlights, air suspension, rubber flooring throughout, premium cabin lighting, and a leather-wrapped steering wheel. Land Rover has thrown in some optional extras in this case, which is enough to push the asking price to $121,540. Some would be a no-brainer for me: bigger infotainment display, off-road pack, tow hitch. But some others seem quite expensive: folding fabric roof, domestic plug socket, privacy glass, black contrast roof. Safe to say, you can choose your own adventure in terms of options and budget. There are plenty of paths to take, and you'll unfortunately be waiting up to 9 months for your car to arrive. There's never a dull moment in the four-wheel drive UTA segment. As manufacturers jostle among each other for market share, there is a constant stream of improvements, adjustments and updates. For example, take this 2022 Nissan Navara Pro 4X Warrior. Despite getting constant changes, updates, adjustments and improvements, since this coil-sprung Navara generation first landed back in 2015, Nissan has recently given its four-wheel drive UTA a thorough working over in order to keep up with the Joneses. The Warrior specification, tuned and augmented in Australia by Premcar and Nissan, is right at the top of the Navara range. It's priced from $69,990 before on-road costs and brings improvements to suspension, protection, capability and specification. This new top specification Navara is also an indicator of how the four-wheel drive UTA segment is faring. Buyers, and therefore manufacturers, are no longer content with only high-grade models like the Ranger Wildtrak, Amarok Ultimate or Hilux Rogue. They want increased performance and augmented presence, more than what just a sticker pack and a few bolt-on accessories can muster. Normally, buyers head to the thriving aftermarket industry to fulfill such needs. They go there in droves, and they aren't afraid of spending a heavy quid in order to get what they want. However, manufacturers are also getting in on the act: turnkey solutions with high specifications, upgraded mechanicals, and improved driving experiences both on-road and off-road. This new-look Navara Pro 4X Warrior picks up where the old N-Trek Warrior left off, using local engineering firm Premcar to augment the Navara into something new. And it's something certainly more special. Specially tuned suspension, done by Premcar in Australia, increased the ride height for overall ground clearance and dampers tuned to suit the new application. There are also larger, more aggressive Cooper all-terrain tires on unique 17-inch wheels, underbody bash plates, improved bump stops, and a winch-compatible bull bar, with an integrated light bar, that suits the Navara's new look. The tow bar has been redesigned for improved off-road clearance, and Nissan has gone to the effort of increasing the GVM, gross vehicle mass, of the Navara Warrior by 100 kilograms, which means the payload stays mostly intact. Other new elements are splashes of red on the suspension components and bash plates, as well as the front badge, to help piece together that whole modified image. Inside. Land Rover Defender. What's most impressive about the inside of the Defender is that they've created something modern, unique and practical, but still carrying shades of inspiration from the old, cramped and tractor-like forebear. An open, minimalist, Land Rover likes the term reductive, dashboard is loaded with opportunities for storing your daily accoutrements. Engineers and designers have kept a close eye on the details here as well, and haven't left any spaces bare. The little slot next to the infotainment display is useful, as is the small spot on the driver's side of the steering wheel. While I might love the idea of the front row jump seat for idyllic drives with kids in the front, I don't think I could go past the center console like we have here. It's big, multi-layered and full of storage, and comes with some additional power outlets. In total, there are stacks of outlets in this car. The electric seats in this model are comfortable, and have a stack of adjustment, and the electric steering column adds a touch of, arguably unnecessary, luxury. We'd like to see seat venting for the price of the option however, which is probably going to get more use in Australia overall than a heated seat. You'll see a lot of neoprene-like material inside the Defender, on door cards, the center console, and across the Jesus bar. It feels nice but shows up marks quickly. After my kids had their way with the Defender's interior, I noted that the surfaces all wipe down easily with baby wipes back to clean. That's a big plus for a family car. Another good one for families and four-wheel drivers is the addition of well-designed and good quality rubber floor mats. Many would probably find rubber flooring in a $120,000 European SUV a misstep, but it's a detail that speaks to the Defender's roots as a raw utility vehicle. These floor mats are deep dish, catching debris well, and securely mounted with push-on clips. They are easy to remove and shake out, or even hose off. Buttons at the back help the Defender dip its bum for easier loading, and there are a handful of other features like hooks and tie-down points for helpful practicality. Land Rover quotes 972L wet of storage space in the back, which sounds impressive. But if it were done against VDA methods of measurement, that number likely wouldn't be as high. The hard plastics, with a tough checker plate finish, help in the practicality stakes, as does the variety of additional storage spots around the place. If you fold down the second row, that wet number grows to 2277L. Once again, it's not fair to directly compare this number to other measurements, but you've still got a large amount of available space on offer. The second row seats don't fold completely flat, but they do sport hard plastic covers on the back for being loading up. Since it launched back in 2014, Nissan's new Navara hasn't managed to hold the same slice of pie that the previous generation D40 Navara enjoyed for many years. It used to be a constant number 2 in the segment behind the Toyota Hilux. These days, in terms of sales numbers, the Navara has been bested by the likes of Ford Ranger and Mitsubishi Triton, as well as the Isuzu D-Max. If the Navara were as good as this iteration straight off the bat, the fifth major update, it might not have conceded so much territory. Inside, the Navara Pro 4X Warrior benefits from a variety of changes that mostly debuted across the range before this update. There's a new steering wheel design, a bigger and better infotainment display, and updated instrument cluster. This Navara Warrior gets a new seat design with electric adjustment. It's lacking heating in this specification, and doesn't have the same degree of adjustment that other UTA pews have. The Navara is also missing reach adjustment, a symptom of the platform's age, but I found once I was in and behind the wheel, I was comfortable. There's a good selection of power outlets, with a USB-C spot hiding in the center console along with a USB-A and 12V in the dashboard. Storage is also decent but not as good as the Isuzu D-Max or Toyota Hilux. Air vents in the second row will be appreciated by those stuck in the back, along with the USB-A power outlet. Space and general comfort in the back are good, with enough room for adults to get comfortable. Underneath the seat bases is a small amount of usable storage among the scissor jack and wheel brace. Or that seat can remain flipped upwards for those who might want to use the second row for straight storage. It's a small detail, but I do love that sliding rear window in the back of the Navara. It helps to keep the fresh air flowing while driving without as much buffeting and noise. Infotainment and connectivity. Land Rover Defender. While the standard 10.0-inch infotainment display in a Land Rover Defender is great, I was taken aback by the improvement that came with the larger, optional 11.4-inch unit. I assumed it wouldn't make much difference, but it's quite impressive. Maybe it's the slight curvature of the screen, or maybe it's the brightness and crispness of the display. I don't know, it's just seriously nice. There is plenty of power behind the screen as well. There's Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, both of which can run wirelessly, the ability to connect multiple devices at once, plus digital radio and native navigation. The operating system is a cracker as well. It's smooth and easy to use, balancing the trick of having plenty of functionality without feeling bogged down by the details. While there are plenty of pixels for driver and passenger to dig through, it's not the same ultra-touchy experience as you'd find in a modern Mercedes-Benz or Audi. The digital instrument cluster mostly mimics analog with its dials and readouts, but you can adjust this with things like full-screen mapping if you so desire. Continuing the whole antithesis of the forebear kind of theme, the new Defender is capable of software updates over the air. That means the car is connected to the internet, and can install software updates like your phone or computer does. It also has the ability to monitor the mechanical condition of the vehicle, and can call in an earlier service or dealer assistance when needed. Nissan's new generation infotainment display, measuring in at 8.0 inches and first appearing just before the facelift, is good. It's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, digital radio, navigation, and an easy-to-use operating system. There are buttons to push and knobs to twist, which makes operating it on the fly easy. The size is good enough, but those wanting maximum infotainment real estate will look elsewhere, like the Isuzu D-Max and Mazda BT50. And of course, new models on the horizon, like the Ford Ranger, will continue to push the boundaries of what a normal screen size is. Keeping up with the Joneses is no easy task, after all. However, if you're content not to be at the pointy end of the pixel arms race that most cars are part of, this Navara system has absolutely nothing wrong with it. You've also got the benefit of a 360-degree surround view camera, something of a rarity in this segment. The instrument cluster in the Navara persists with analog gauges, again, nothing wrong with it at all, supplemented by a larger screen in the middle. This has a bit more functionality going on these days, with more information to easily dig through. We particularly like the tire pressure monitoring on a four-wheel drive. It's handy when you head out into the bush and forget your tire gauge, as well as for those longer touring-type trips. Knowing exactly what your pressures are doing all the time is quite a luxury, and adds in a good dose of peace of mind. Safety and technology. Land Rover Defender. Naturally, the new Land Rover Defender takes a quantum leap forward when it comes to safety. While it makes do without a front center airbag that is becoming increasingly commonplace on passenger cars and SUVs, the new Defender still managed a 5-star NCAP safety rating against stringent 2020 requirements. There's autonomous emergency braking, which includes junction, pedestrian and cyclist detection, blind spot monitoring and assistance, a 360-degree surround view camera, with wonderful image quality, clear exit monitor for occupants getting out, lane keep assistance, traffic sign recognition, adaptive cruise control, with stop and go, and parking assistance. There is also something called rear collision monitor, which acts like a low-speed autonomous emergency braking in reverse, that operates in tandem with rear cross-traffic alert and includes steering support. There's a lot of driver assistance technology to dig through via the convex display. There are all manner of readouts and information, including a handy display of vehicle dimensions for when you're tackling underground car parks. Don't forget about the height-adjustable air suspension, so you can squeeze into spaces lower than 2.0 m. Just. A lot of the technology on board the Defender centers around off-road usage, with a variety of selectable off-road modes to choose from. Depending on how well specified your vehicle is, you'll get the more advanced Terrain Response 2 system that has a bit of extra technological firepower. On top of your typical off-road driving modes, you also get a configurable terrain response mode, and Land Rover's take on an off-road cruise control, all-terrain progress control. Nissan Navara. A big part of why the Navara scored an update is to help accommodate a new wave of advanced safety equipment. Along with looking more brash and certainly more American, it also scores autonomous emergency braking, keeping up with more Joneses. There is a 5-star NCAP safety rating, with the original 2015 result being updated in 2020 to reflect the new active safety equipment. There's also blind spot monitoring and rear cross-traffic alert, but the Navara is missing adaptive cruise control, speed sign recognition, and a front center airbag, which was debuted by the Isuzu D-Max and Mazda BT50 twins for this segment. Value for money. Land Rover Defender. In some respects, the Land Rover Defender can be seen as a good value proposition. It's not a cheap vehicle by any stretch of the imagination. But considering how much vehicle and specification we've got here, in comparison to a Toyota Land Cruiser 300 series, then you could say that the Defender is better value for money. Even with the large volume of options that have been thrown onto our test car, many of which you could happily live without, we are a long distance away from the top-spec Land Cruiser GR Sport or Sahara ZX. Nissan's Patrol is much better value, yes. And it's sporting few weaknesses through its petrol-only powertrain and driving experience. However, it also feels quite old in comparison to this Defender. Of course, you can spend a lot more on a 2022 Land Rover Defender if you feel so inclined. Either on the long options list or opting for a higher specification, you can get something that starts with a 2 easily enough. But for our money, this diesel feels like a comfortable fit for the Defender's intended purpose. Diesel power still makes sense for a vehicle of this size, keeping fuel consumption impressively low. This is especially the case on the highway, and you don't seem to have much of a performance deficit. The 3.0-liter diesel engine, now the only diesel option in the Defender 110 range, sits not far behind Toyota's larger 3.3-liter V6, 220 kilowatts per 650 newton meters versus 227 kilowatts per 700 newton meters. And for those who prefer petrol propulsion, the P400 petrol 3.0-liter turbocharged inline-6 nearly exactly matches the naturally aspirated 5.6-liter V8 of the Nissan Patrol, 294 kilowatts per 550 newton meters plays 298 kilowatts per 560 newton meters. Servicing costs $2,650 over 5 years, and Land Rover's warranty covers 5 years and unlimited kilometers. Instead of having traditional service intervals, the Defender keeps an eye on operating hours, kilometers covered, your driving style and conditions to indicate when a service is due. And while the claimed fuel economy is an impressive 7.9 liters per 100 kilometers, we didn't match that. Perhaps we were too busy listening to 6 in a row at higher revs, but we saw around 9.5 L/100 km from our time in the car. There are a few different angles to look at this Navara with the value scope in mind. Firstly, one can look at it like a discount Ranger Raptor, something that performs similarly at a lower price. The Navara Warrior scores points for maintaining its 3,500 kilograms towing and near-ton payload as well, something the Raptor cannot match. However, when it comes to the significance of the modifications and the overall impact on the end result, the Ranger Raptor is still a cut above. Another way to look at the Navara Warrior is like a pre-modified Navara straight off the showroom floor. And that makes sense, because all of the additions you see on this Navara are common for modified four-wheel drives: wheels, tires, suspension, and protection. Does it represent good value for money? Costing around $10,000 more than the Pro 4X on which it's based, you could easily argue that 10 gorillas will get easily sucked up through suspension, wheels, tires, and a fitted bull bar. Add in some finer details like bump stops, bash plates, and the modified tow bar, and the Warrior starts to make even more sense. Aftermarket offerings, no matter how good or personalized they are, cannot match a few things this Navara Warrior does. Firstly, a seamless integration with the factory manufacturer's warranty. And secondly, the 100 kilograms bump in GVM, and therefore payload. And in order to get a suspension setup that matches or improves what this Warrior does, you'll have to spend a considerable amount of money and time on something of high enough quality. In other words, don't go shopping on eBay for springs and shocks. But at the same time, some punters out there would be able to match, or even better, the equipment offering of the Navara Warrior for less money, if they were more selective with their choice of aftermarket equipment. That will be a horses for courses argument and will depend upon personal tastes and requirements. And while modifications and warranties have been known to butt heads from time to time, the ability for one to choose specific accessories and modifications to suit their tastes, wants and budgets is never a bad thing. However, aftermarket equipment will need to be quality stuff, of which there is plenty available from big and small companies alike, if it wants to match the Warrior for fit and finish. The good thing about the Warrior specification is that it makes the Navara better in just about every facet: to sit in, look at, drive on-road and off-road. And not losing those workhorse characteristics of a good payload and towing capacity will help sway their opinion, especially if they plan on using their spec'd-up UTA for weekly work duties. And while the modifications have already begun, it doesn't mean they will stop. Adding things like storage, 12V, recovery equipment, especially a winch, which will now fit, will always be on the minds of current and prospective owners. The 2022 Nissan Navara Warrior gets a 5-year and unlimited kilometer warranty, equal with most in the segment, and a capped price servicing schedule. It's reasonably priced from a 4-wheel drive UTA, as well. Visit every 12 months or 15,000 kilometers, and you'll be spending $2,847 over the 5 years. That equals out to $596.40 per year. There are cheaper examples of this, but don't forget that a 4-wheel drive UTA has more oily bits than most others. Land Rover Defender. Back when I first drove the Defender, engineers explained that although they had a thoroughly modern vehicle with plenty of electronic controls, they wanted the vehicle to imbibe a mechanical, connected feeling. The steering is electrically assisted, and the braking system doesn't use a hydraulic master cylinder. Instead, it's brake-by-wire using computer controls. Rear and center differentials are computer-controlled for variable locking and slip, and you've got height-adjustable air suspension and a very active traction control system. However, despite this onslaught of technology, the absolute antithesis of the original Defender, this new Defender does maintain a wonderful sense of feel and engagement while driving. It's a tricky thing to define and value, but it's something my wife picked up on while driving. "It's just so nice," she remarked a few times while punting around town. And I agree. I won't get tied up in knots trying to explain the feeling of the steering, body and brakes with vague and oblique words. I'll just say that it's a pleasure to drive. Perhaps much less challenging to describe is the engine, which is a joy. Although not fast, there is enough power available to make the Defender feel positively brisk. The 220 kilowatts and 650 Newton-meters outputs are stout numbers, no doubt. But don't forget they have to shove nearly 2.5 tons worth of Slovakian-built British metal. And while there are plenty of examples of joyous and soulful V6s, this engine reminded me of how nice an inline-six can really be. This doesn't bark or scream with any big delivery of decibels. It's an impressively muted, smooth and refined diesel powertrain. The noise, both from the exhaust and the engine itself, is still quite pleasurable. It's an engine handled well by the ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox matched by a typically long-travel accelerator pedal. And while the Defender maintains nice feeling of steering through corners, it can only hide the height and weight so long. Don't drive it like you stole it, and you'll find it quite enjoyable. Off-road, it's a bit of a different story. Not in terms of capability, because that is there in spades. Although, the Urban Focus 20-inch wheels do let down the package overall for proper low-range bush driving. There just isn't enough sidewall available, and the wheels are in the firing line for scratches and damage. Where the real strength of the Defender comes through is in two important off-road disciplines: clearance and traction. Jack the air suspension up to the off-road setting, and your available clearance goes from good to great. The wheels are already close to the outside corners, which eliminates big overhangs. The tire diameter is quite large overall, and there aren't any live axles underneath to get hung up on. For reference's sake, I reckon there is plenty more underbody clearance in this standard Defender than you would get on a traditional live-axle 4-wheel drive with 35-inch tires. Next, traction. Articulation is decent, with the interlinked air suspension somewhat able to mimic live-axle flexing and keep wheels on the ground where possible. It's not what you'd call slinky in long travel, but it's pretty good. Where most of the strength comes from is in the electronic off-road smarts, and this is where the difference lies. Whereas the driver feels engaged and intrinsic on-road, you can sometimes feel like a bystander when you are off-road. There are times you can sense that the Defender actively looks to disengage your participation because it knows better. And it's right. Getting the best out of the Defender off-road often involves a slow dose of momentum, steady throttle inputs, and a mite of patience as the Defender looks to find a way forward. Like Magnus Carlsen moving pawns, the Defender shuffles various amounts of torque between wheels as it looks to find the perfect attacking combination. It's perhaps not the choice for someone who wants to challenge themselves and their own driving skill, because the Defender is too smart and capable in its own right. But if your endgame is more about getting through the challenge, whether that is for reaching the idyllic campsite or just because you want to, then the Defender will likely do it. Just think about your choice of wheels and tires first. Without any changes to the engine and gearbox for this Navara Warrior, the driving experience does mimic cheaper Navara variants in many ways. The 2.3-liter 4-cylinder twin-turbo diesel engine might sound a little rattly at times in comparison to other engines out there, but develops a thick and purposeful push of torque not far above idle. The engine seems at its strongest around the lower and middle rev ranges, which is something matched well by the 7-speed automatic gearbox. Its 140 kilowatts and 450 Newton-meters aren't shabby, and feel like enough for this Navara tootling around town and cruising along the highway. There is a little bit of breathlessness that comes into play at the upper end of the rev range, and feeling less comfortable and willing if the engine is forced to slog away around the vicinity of the redline for too long. It's not bad, and is something more noticeable when fully loaded up or towing. Unladen, you'll be doing well to notice it. The ride quality afforded by the pumped-up suspension in this Navara Warrior yields a big and obvious benefit over normal Navara variants. After a few attempts to get it right, Nissan fiddled with the steering as well and finally ended up with a car that is quite competent around town overall. It's good, yes, but this Warrior is better. There's a sense of cushioning and suppleness, but also good body control and a nice steering feel that help elevate the driving experience. One can push harder along rough surfaces quite happily, as well as unsealed roads with more control and confidence. The inevitable comparison between Warrior and Raptor will be made, and there is a difference there. The Warrior's smartly tuned and big twin-tube shock absorbers can't match the internal bypassing Fox shocks, but one shouldn't expect it to either. Off-road, the increased ground clearance and protection yield a solid bump in overall performance. Add in good quality 32-inch all-terrain tires, with light truck construction no less, and a locking rear differential, and this Navara Warrior packs a solid off-road punch overall. Bash plates are solid, 3mm steel, and able to take a good hit off-road, which will inevitably happen when you start taking on some more challenging tracks. The side steps are unchanged, and from our experience are easy to damage off-road when you run out of sill clearance. At least they are higher off the ground in this case thanks to the suspension and taller tires. The fact that Nissan allows traction control to operate on the front wheels while the rear diff is locked, not every UTA does this, also helps. The rear differential locks the rear wheels together, but the Navara's ABS module is able to nip away at the front wheels and pull traction to the right wheels when the going gets tough. We found the standard Navara to be quite a good jigger off-road at our recent off-road mega test, and a bit of a dark horse in comparison to others in the segment. And the good news is that the Navara Warrior is able to build upon these strengths. One could easily mount an argument that these two vehicles aren't likely to be cross-shopped by buyers. But maybe they should. Both are coming from a similar point of view, adding off-road ability. Naturally, those who want the benefits of a UTA, payload and a tub, will lean in the direction of the Navara. It's a good candidate for those who want to further modify their vehicle for additional off-road ability, but the standard offering is a high level. The tires are a particular strength and advantage over the Defender. However, the more spacious and comfortable second row of the Defender would be more appealing for those who want to use the vehicle for family duties. The Navara Warrior is impressive. While the changes to suspension, wheels and tires bring clear and solid improvement to off-road capability, the work done also yields a better vehicle overall. While the Navara is no doubt good, it's the Defender that manages to tug at the heartstrings the most. The engine is more powerful and sonorous, and the air suspension yields more comfort and reward on the road. The wheels are a hindrance to those who want to off-road regularly, but the amount of capability on offer is nothing short of impressive.